Okay, let's talk about graphing. We are going to have two axes. We're going to have our x-axis and our y. Along the x-axis, we're going to put our percent ethanol. Okay, and of course, we're going to add our unit afterwards in parentheses. On the y-axis, we are going to have our density. And we're also going to make sure that our unit is in parentheses. Okay? Whenever you're graphing something, it is always y as a function of x. Okay? So in this case, it is density as a function of percent ethanol. That's what we would put as our title, density as a function of percent ethanol. I know it's a mouthful, but it is always y as a function of x. So now that we have our axes, now we're going to generate our essentially our divisions on the line. We'll start at the origin, okay, and it doesn't have to start at 0, it doesn't have to start at 1. We'll actually look at our data and see how far apart we want to have things. So if we look at our data, our density data, because that's what we're going to plot first, we notice that we have, goes all the way up to 0.998, so all the way up to 1 essentially, and the lowest value we have is 0.982. So that means we're probably going to want to start our axes down here at about 0.97. 0.98 would work as well, but for this lab we want to make sure that we have it a little bit below 0.98. You're going to count about 5 up on your graph paper, put in a line, count about 5 up, put in a line, count 5 up, put in a line, so on and so forth until you get up, until you run out of squares. So 0.97, we'll call this one 0.98, 0.99, 1.00, and there we go. We have our axes. Of course, all of this data will fit on the axes, and it's going to take up a good portion of the room. That's the goal in creating a good axis. You want to make sure that your data will fit, and it will fit spread out. You don't want to have it really crunched together. If I made this 0.99 and this made this 1, all of our data would be stuck right here, and we have all of this space. So utilize all of that space. Next up, we're going to do our ethanol. We have 0 to 10%. But I can let you know that in our lab, we can get up to 20%. I've seen people get up to 20%. So we want to make sure that we have up to 20%. Of course, we want to start at 0 and go all the way down to around 20%. So once again, start on the origin, count 5, create a bunch of hashes, and we'll go 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. That means every single one of your little units is actually going to be 1% alcohol. So now that we have our axes, this is the data that you find on the first page, and we're going to plot that data. Ignoring the number that you actually got in the lab, we're going to plot this data. So at 0%, we expect to see it at 0.998, so our number should be about here. Next up, at 2%, we should see it at 0.995, about halfway in between, 0.991, so at 4%, so just above 0.988, so about here for 6%, 0.985 for 8%, 985, and then finally 0.982 for 10%. You may notice that these are kind of going in a straight line, but we have one above, one below. They're kind of, their measurements are not perfect. Okay, so the next step is to create a trend line. So why don't you do this on your lab and then start the video again. Stop it.